back to some of our histories about the development of the Australian colonies. Now, last video I talked about William Bligh and the Mutiny and the Bounty, and we were going to follow it up with another video about what happened to William Bligh when he became governor. But before we do that, we need to go back a little bit again and talk about some other important people in this scenario. Now, about 1790, John Macarthur, he was part of the British Army, and he decided to get on a boat and come on the Second Fleet to join the army in Australia to help with the development of the colonies. Now, if I'm being honest, Macarthur basically came because he was looking for financial and for material gain. That was what they were aiming for. They wanted to establish themselves and to basically become rich. Now, the Second Fleet was horrendous. The boat that they were on, called the Neptune, was one of the most horrendous voyages ever. A quarter of the people died. The people who were running the boat were a private company. They were not part of the army or the navy or one of those things. They were a private company, so they weren't really concerned with people dying, and they didn't really look after people very well. But he managed to survive that, and then he got to the colony. Now, when he got to the colony, there was a colony that was really struggling. The first fleet of 1,000 people had nearly starved on the way, waiting for the Second Fleet to arrive. So it wasn't like it was booming. Now, when he gets there, he joins the Army Corps, and he talks to the governor, and he gets given 100 acres of land out near Rouse Hill, which is just past Parramatta. And he sets to developing his farming to sort of work on that. Now, he basically came to become rich, and when you come to the colony at this time, not only do they give you the land, but they actually give you pretty much free convicts to work the land as much as you want. So you can pretty much have like a whole bunch of convicts working the land, building a farm for you, and you really don't have to do much at all. Which sounds horrible, but at the time they actually needed free settlers. This was a town that was crying out for agriculture and to build an industry based on having more food and more crops and things like that. So the free settlers are actually helping that. However, they were in it for themselves and were trying to get financial gain. Now, what happened after that is, during the time he was developing a reputation as someone who was very hot-headed and very aggressive and wasn't really an easy person to get along with. Although he did seem to have a fairly good relationship with the Darug people and the Aboriginal people who lived in that area at the time, his relationship with a lot of other people was a little bit strained, to say the least. Now, his business was booming during that time, and him and his army with part of the Rum Corps and also with his farming. But that all changed in about 1800 when Governor Phillip King came to Australia. Now, when Governor Phillip King came to Australia, he saw a colony that was in absolute trouble. What had happened is the police corps had pretty much taken control of this colony. What they were doing was they were importing all sorts of rum, which is a type of alcohol. They were importing huge amounts of rum into the colony and then selling that at a huge profit, which means that they were making so much money, the defense were making so much money just off alcohol, which two things meant: they were corrupt, and secondly meant that the colony had basically turned into a whole bunch of drunk people fighting and doing all sorts of stuff. So they developed that, and it became a kind of currency. Instead of using money, they would trade in rum. Now, Governor Phillip King, when he came here, decided he was going to stop that. So he put a stop to that, and Macarthur and the rest of the Army Corps were furious. Macarthur actually ordered some people, he threatened and blackmailed to basically say that if the governor does this, then we won't provide protection for the governor at his house, which basically means like he'll have no protection. Now, he got into a lot of fights with a lot of people, and he actually had an argument with his superior of his who he didn't agree with, and the way that they decided to solve this was through a duel, which I don't know if you know what a duel is, but it's basically where you stand a certain distance away and then you wait and you count, and then you both draw your guns and try to shoot each other. And they actually did do it, and Macarthur shot his superior in the shoulder. Now, when the governor found out, he was furious at Macarthur and sent him back to England to basically pay for his crimes. So he got what's called court-martialed. So he got sent over there, and on the trip back to England on the boat, he suspiciously, all his paperwork to do with his crimes had gone missing. So when he got back there was no crimes to be really done because all the evidence had gone missing, which was just a little bit suspicious. Now, when he gets over there, he's in England, and he thinks, before I come back to Australia, maybe I should try and do some work and see if I can try to make my business even better. So he starts talking to lots of people, trying to get them to give him lots of sheep to take back to Australia. He tries to get people to give him lots of land, try to grant him lots of land. Which he has a little bit of a problem because some people like Joseph Banks, which I don't know if you know who Joseph Banks is, but he's very, very key, and he was actually with Captain Cook's voyage. who doesn't really agree with what he's doing much. And then basically the Lord Camden, which is what Camden City is named after, decides to give him, I forget how much it is, but it's something like 500 acres or 5,000 acres. I'm not sure, we have to check that. Which basically means then when he comes back to Australia, Governor Phillip King sent him back to England so that he could pay and go to prison. And not only does he not go to prison, but he comes back and now he owns huge amounts of land, which infuriated Governor Phillip King. He was furious at this. And not only that, but but then Macarthur decides that the land he's going to take is this place out near Parramatta, okay, and which is basically called the cow pastures, which they'd held specifically for if they needed it, and Macarthur just came and took it. Which, if you know anything about our area, Cow Pasture Road, basically it was because that was the cow pasture. So when we're talking about Macarthur, he owned this whole bit of land out kind of where we are now at Adenza Park. So then that happens and he gets given this land and he basically just then starts making a huge farming empire based on the land that he was given when he really didn't deserve anything. I think we're going to leave it there. And in our next video, we'll talk about what happens with a colony when Governor Phillip King they decide to put him back in England, and they decide they're going to send over a new governor. And that new governor is the infamous William Bligh from the Mutiny of the Bounty, who has strong, strict, tyrannical leadership qualities. And what happens when he joins the colony and he meets up with the other strong figure in the Australian colonies, John Macarthur, the strong, influential free settler with his connections to the corrupt rum corps who have been importing all this rum. And when these two people meet and these two the rum corps and William Bligh have to interact with each other, what ends up happening is pretty interesting. So we'll get to that next video. I hope you've learned something today, and make sure you stay watching for the third installment. Thanks for watching.